How's it going, guys? Welcome to the PAV Pod. Today, I had the honor of sitting with an old advertising professor of mine, Richard Bingham, and we got to talk about a ton of different things, his life's journey, the pivots and moves he made, topics of regret and rejection, as well as his crazy obsession with Gothic cathedrals at one point in his life. I don't think he has that obsession anymore, but he did. So if you guys are interested in a really cool story on someone's life, sit back, relax, and enjoy, and thank you. I actually wanted to thank you, first and foremost, for coming on. I really appreciate it. You are the first one.
Oh, okay. So, wow. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. No pressure. But I do want to thank you. And I wanted to have you on because I remember one day it was copywriting or creative writing class, 8 a.m., so super early. And you even called it out. You're like, I know it's hard to be creative sometimes at 8 a.m. because you've gotten up and you went through the bus or drove or whatever. It's rainy that day too. And you said sometimes the bus juices come out right when you wake up in the morning. You should just write some stuff down. And you stopped that class. And I don't know what the reason was, but you had said, I want everyone to get a blank piece of paper and write out a 10-year plan, where you want to be in 10 years. And then think of where you need to be in 5 years to get to that 10-year plan. And then think of yourself in 1 year from now, that's going to get you to that 5-year plan. And that always stuck with me for whatever reason. I maybe never heard that as a kid, but I always thought that was so fascinating to like kind of plan. And you prefaced, you're going to pivot. Whatever goal you have in 10 years, it's going to change. 100%. Expect it to. Get used to writing these plans down because at some point you're going to start to move and it's going to take you somewhere. And you may not go the way you thought when you were first writing this first one, but you've made steps towards something that you kind of wanted in those different moments, whereas before you'd maybe just be standing still. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, as one of the first questions was, did you have a 10-year plan when you were young? Did you, when did this come about?
Okay, yeah. Fascinating. Well, it was very interesting because, full disclosure, that was an idea that I ripped off from Heidi Ehlers.
Okay.
Heidi was a good friend of mine, and she was a talent recruiter for the advertising agency. So she was a headhunter basically, and I got her involved with the program a few years before, and she came in and gave a talk, and her point was, as someone herself who had worked with innumerable creatives. And her job as a recruiter is to basically find them the best possible career path, right? And because job matching, right? And she said it always drove her crazy because creative people have this kind of magical thinking around them where they think that success will just happen to them magically because it's supposed to, because it's destined or fated, or they deserve it, or they don't deserve it if they don't get it, right? And it was actually she who sort of said, no, this is what you got to do, right? And I remember sitting there at the talk listening, God damn it, where were you when I was 25? Because I would be living on my own private island in Mustique right now if you had given me this talk when I was 25. So I determined that I was going to totally steal that, which of course she, totally with her blessing, and made a point of bringing it forward with my students because, and I've done this with my own son now. Like, dude, think about where you want to be in 10 years because, again, it doesn't matter if you get there. What matters is you start thinking about a trajectory. And it's a little bit like exercise. Anything will help, right? So if you actually put a stake in the ground and say, and Heidi's point about this was also that don't hold back with the ambition. Like, what do you really want? Like I want to win a Cannes Lion and I want to be a creative director by the time I'm 37 years old. Okay, boom, stake in the ground. Now, 5 years back, and then 5 years back from there, where do you have to be? And then 3 years back, and 2 years back, and 1 year back, and like 6 months back, and tomorrow, right? And suddenly, instead of this huge, enormous, impossible goal you got 10 years from now, here's 3 more steps that I can do, and I'm just going to work my way along there. And nobody gets to plan a perfect arc, right? Everybody's career, in some sense, is what I like to refer to as a drunkard's walk. Because what happens?
Put that on my LinkedIn profile.
As you start that trajectory of the thing, there's the thing I want to get to, right? And then as you're doing it, inevitably, other opportunities arise, other goals that you didn't even know existed show themselves to you, and then you just you make an adjustment, or you pivot, or you do but by taking control of it, by actually saying, I have some agency in this, I can't guarantee that I'm going to get there, but if I just sit around waiting for it to happen, it ain't going to happen. Right. So, like by launching into that, you inevitably begin to make some kind of progress, which may actually get you exactly where you want to be. But even if it doesn't, it's going to get you somewhere interesting and probably way better than just kind of letting things happen to you in your career.
Yeah. And were you, so at 25, you really wish you had this knowledge?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah?
yeah. Oh my God.
What was young Richard?
Well, so what was I was, at that point I was on my way to grad school in England, studying English and Renaissance drama, because that's what I was into. I'd done art for a while, and then I got out of that and traveled for a while, and then I went to the U of T and started focusing on English. Again, talk about drunkard's walk. How did I end up majoring in English? I was I was picking my courses for first year. And I'm at the dining room table of my good friend, Phil Kramer, old buddy of mine, still my friend. And I'm thinking, well, what do I want? So I thought, well, I'll try a history course and a philosophy course and a political science course, because these are all things I was interested in. And I want to take an English course. What English course should I take? And his mother happened to pop her head out of the kitchen and say, well, there's that fellow John Maher who teaches at St. Mike's, and apparently he's very good. He teaches Shakespeare. And I go, okay. So on that, I take this Shakespeare course. Blew my head off. It's like, and and he was a fantastic teacher. I ended up actually TAing the course for him in fullness of time, but it wouldn't have occurred to me to do that. But there was this little kind of an accidental thing. It turned out to be really cool. I met my first really serious girlfriend in that class, which was also really awesome.
Yeah, win-win for sure.
It was a big win all around. And then maybe that might have overbalanced me too much to that. But anyway, so
it's all her fault.
Yeah,
or you got to thank her for sure.
I'll thank her. Yeah, she was great. But so then my other options that I was studying, which were all kind of cool, but they did not turn my crank the way this did. So it's like, okay, now I have the sign. I like literature is what I really want to dig into. So that's what I end up doing. And so I get through UT and I'm doing really well, and I'm thinking, I was kind of had the academic thing kind of, so let's see where I can go with this. So there's this program in the UK at the University of Warwick, which was associated with the National Theatre or the Royal Shakespeare Company, and it was a basic graduate program in Renaissance drama. I want it. And I also had a bit of an England thing, because you wouldn't know it to look at me, but I'm also, I come from Britain. My people come from Britain, right? And so I actually had citizenship, so it was easy to move there. So I ended up doing that. But
for how long were you?
So I did a master's degree there. So So I was there for like 2 years. And then the question was, well, what do I want to do from there? And then and it wasn't the happiest experience from an academic standpoint for me. I did not have a great relationship with my professor, which kind of embittered me to the whole academic thing. It's like, okay, so now I got to shift from there. And that's kind of the moment where that's where I needed the 10-year plan, because, I ended up going into publishing, and, and that's where I kind of let stuff happen in a way. And it was all fun. It was all great. And I was having a good time. I was doing stuff I enjoyed, but I just think that if I had more structure in my thinking, I could have optimized those amazing opportunities that I got, and probably have made a little more out of them. I'm not to say that I'm dissatisfied with how I ended up, but I just think that there was probably more to be had from that stuff if I had forced myself to have a little bit of structure. And I had exactly what Heidi was talking about. I had the whole artist's thing about magical thinking. Like, if I'm really good, if I'm really talented, if I'm really meant to be a success, I'll be a success because that's how it happens with creative people. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We actually have to work at it. We have to plan at it. We have to be specific about our goals. And if we are, surprise, we're going to be more successful.
And so is that what you kind of went with when you were turned off by your prof? Is that it's going to happen? Is that what you told yourself? Because you said you had fun with it and you needed more of that structure, but
yeah, no, but that was it was sort of after the graduate school experience, and I loved being in graduate school. I loved the work. I realized that the path towards a career in academia was probably not going to be a happy one for me.
Because of the prof, or like
well, I was like there was this. Grad school is the most boring thing in the world to talk about. Because it's political and it's petty and it's really not especially interesting. But I just realized fairly clearly that was not going to be a career path forward for me. But the back of my mind is always, bigger idiots than me do fine. So I never really worried about it. But I didn't get very specific about it beyond, okay, I studied a whole lot of literature. I love books. What am I going to do that puts me in that world? So that's how I kind of ended up first working for a magazine, which is a magazine about books.
A magazine about books.
Yeah, it was actually a literary trade magazine called Quill and Quire. It still exists
in the UK.
No, I actually came home after. I did try for a little while to stay in the UK. I applied for some jobs at the BBC in Panama.
Oh, okay.
So I just thought, okay. I also realized from being away from home that I actually was really Canadian.
Okay. Elaborate on that. What does that mean?
Well, it's a funny thing.
You missed the maple syrup.
Yeah, there's in downtown London, in London, in the center of London. There's a place called the Maple Leaf Pub. It's in Leicester Square.
What?
And it's a Canadian pub. I'm sure it's probably still there. And so every now and then when I came down to London a lot because my then girlfriend, her parents lived in London, and so I got to use their place a lot. And so I sometimes just go down to the Maple Leaf Pub because I knew that I could pick up a copy of the Globe and Mail. They'd have Maclean's magazine, that was an old magazine that used to be around, but they'd have hockey games on the TV, right? Sick. So if I wanted to just check in with home, right, I could do it. And I also noticed that funny thing that happens when people from North America go to the UK to do graduate school, they start acquiring an accent.
No way. You had an accent?
Well, no, actually, because my parents are British, I'm very attuned to British accents. Sure. And so I could hear and watch, other people doing this. I'm going, oh, no. I am Canadian. I'm Canadian, and I'm going to pronounce my words like a Canadian, and I'm not going to be ashamed of it.
That's so
because
funny.
That's who I am. And what's more, I don't need to prove anything to anybody in this boggy little country because my people were here like 1,000 years ago anyhow, and we left. So,
exactly.
So you all, and I'm just going to speak the way I speak because I am, to quote the ad, Canadian. And so, exactly. So I love being there. I love the place. I have connections to it that I can't deny. But I felt, actually, I need to go home. So that's why I went home. And then, so I found myself in the world of books and magazines. Worked for Quill and Quire. I did the Banff Publishing Workshop, which was Banff, the Banff Center, Banff, which was really great. Made a lot of good connections there, and actually I got hired out of that because of the people who go there basically go to hire talent, and so I got hired out of that, and so for this magazine. And I stayed there for a few years. I was like associate editor by the time I left, but I got hired by HarperCollins Publishers as an art director and later creative director. Because while I was at Quill and Quire, I was also doing a lot of stuff. I did a lot of layout and a lot of design for the thing, and I also started doing some work on the side for other clients. And so when they needed an art director, I had already known to the book business, and so that's how I got that gig. And so I stayed there for just almost 6 years, And I left because I was thinking, here's my trajectory. This is what I want to do. Because I was designing a whole lot of books and doing all like the marketing. But what drove me crazy was how primitive the book industry was around marketing and advertising. They just, and it started with the primary advertising, which was the book jackets. Like, I won't go so far as to say that I revolutionized book jacket design in Canada.
Please, but I humble brag.
But I sure pushed the envelope in ways that it hadn't been pushed before. And, because I kept saying to people, like, okay, if we don't have an advertising budget for this great book, then the only advertising we've got is fucking jacket. So it better do a whole lot of work of, like enough of this like beige, books with brown type on it. Like, for Christ's sake, like they've got to leap off the damn bookshelf, right? Yeah. So I pushed a lot of that. And then, I still have in the depths of my really old portfolio, book covers that never got published because there's a couple that I did that I loved so much that I couldn't just sort of give them up. Because, you like, as with all creative stuff, right? Like tons of stuff never sees the light of day. And that's just the reality, we live with it. But I got a couple that I saved because I really loved them. And they just couldn't understand what I was trying to do. But anyway, it didn't matter. And then the internet came along, right? So this is like the mid late 90s. And I'm just going, this is it, guys, this is it. Like, and I had a couple projects that I was trying to get off the ground with them, including, so I could see places like before Amazon existed. And I'm sure, like, I'm not the only person, but I could see that why are we not using this to sell books? Right? It's so cool. I mean, I remember talking to like the president of the company saying, it's like reaching into the Ethernet and pulling the book out. Like, why aren't we doing this? Right? And so I put together this whole proposal that was gonna move our inventory, which was actually on a database of a sort, onto a web server that would have allowed us not only to do inventory control, but also build it out into a website that would allow us to do this kind of sales. And I had it all ready to go. I had it scoped out. I had my vendors lined up. I had my budget going. And the president of the company, God love him, he was a lovely man. He was a former priest. He was in his late 60s. And I walked it through, and he just said, I just don't understand any of this. And so we're not going to do it. And, and I was asking him to spend like $100,000 or something at the time, right? Which was, I admit it was a lot of money, but come on.
Could have paid out. You could have been the next Amazon, the first Amazon.
So he said no. And I thought, okay, that's pretty much it for my future here, because if you guys can't see this,
okay,
I have to start thinking about what my next move is going to be.
Because you noticed that they were so closed off to being innovative and to
they again, I don't want to sound like I'm some kind of seer. This was totally obvious to anyone who was paying attention, right? But there was this significant. It was essentially a generational gap, right? Like he couldn't wrap his head around what this thing was, and so I thought, I can't stay at a place where I have to try to get you to approve, or people like you to approve what we should be doing here if you literally can't understand it. So I got to go.
Well, what made you do? Well, like, I'm wondering. I know a lot of people in my life who have good jobs, but they're not great jobs, or just jobs and not careers that they're passionate about. And so that's so fascinating to me that you're able to do that at, how old were you at the time?
I was 33.
Do you think age helped? I'm curious
absolutely, 100%.
What told you, like, you know what, I'm not going to stay here just because it's a good job per se, right? Listen, it was a
great job. If I had stayed, I'm not sure I would still be employed because the book business kind of went into the toilet. Yeah. But I was on a pretty good track. I was going to be.
And you weren't scared to make that jump, like.
No, a part of it was actually just kind of, you don't know what you don't know, right? So, but it was completely clear to me that this world was opening up, and there was that the whole kind of digital online internet thing was, and this was this was also as we were kind of leading into the first big kind of bull market of the internet before the crash in 2001. And like stuff was clearly happening if you were paying attention. So and I was also starting to like get a little bit of work on the side for doing things like that, like actually building websites and things. And I thought, you know what, between the other thing I was doing at the time was I was also doing a lot of freelance writing, because I never kind of got out of that as well. So I was like writing for like Toronto Life. I had regular columns in Toronto Life, and I wrote for the Globe, and I wrote for the National Post for a bit when that came out. Mostly on the magazine stuff. So at the time, you could actually make a pretty nice little side gig living. Like it was $1 a word, right? $1 a word. Which even at the time we complained because, oh man, $1 a word. That's what they paid in the '70s. I haven't changed the rate. I would kill for $1 a word today, yeah. Right? But you write a 1,500 word piece for the Globe, and it's like $1,500. It's like, okay, that's okay. I'm good for the month, right?
Sounds like $0.05 a word, that's for sure.
Yeah. So between the fact that I had some good regular gigs on that side of things, and what I could see was potential for building out a new kind of marketing company, I said, okay, I'm just going to go. So it began as freelance, and then it turned into a company. When I went to the Canadian Film Center, did their what was then called the kind of new media program. That's where I met my future business partners, and we sort of built it out from there. And and then in the fullness of time, Humber was a client. That's how I ended up teaching there.
Yeah.
So Humber was a client that and in fact, the program was what I was consulting on. Like I was building curriculum for this new program that hadn't launched yet. That's how I got that gig, right? And so, because the initial curriculum that they had developed was developed by people who had never done advertising.
What?
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. It was completely academic. There was no practical stuff to it. And God love him, the guy who was the associate dean at the time, a guy named Toby Fletcher, super guy. He was looking at this stuff going, I don't think there's enough practical stuff in it. So that's when
he got a sense of that, yeah.
So he contacted us, and that was because we'd had a couple of other clients who were post-secondary institutions. So we worked with UT Scarborough, worked with George Brown. We'd worked for what's now called Colleges Ontario.
Okay.
So we had this, for some reason, it was completely accidental, but we had a kind of a good run of working with post-secondary. So that's why he got in touch with us. And so so we sort of looked at the stuff that was there, and I basically rewrote half the curriculum that was initially put to the province that got approved. And I figured that was the end of it. Mm. You got your program, you're underway, like, whatever, great, nice knowing you. And then once the program was approved, Toby got back in touch with me, and he said, would you be interested in teaching any of this stuff? And I said, no.
What?
I got a company to run. This is
fair enough.
Right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
And I said, look, if you're really, really desperate, call me in August, and I'll see if I can find room to maybe teach a course. Right?
You don't have to have a teaching degree to.
No, not in college.
Just a knowledge.
College, university, no. In high school, yes,
yeah.
Right? But yeah, no. The whole point of college, allegedly, is to hire people who
know what they're doing.
Stuff and know what they're doing, right? Yeah. So and in due course, he called me in August, and he said, "Yeah, no, we're having trouble finding people that want to teach this." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And it was like, I don't know how to teach. Yeah. But I know the material because I wrote it. So, okay, so I'll do it. And I taught, I think, 2 courses. I only wanted to teach one, but he talked me to teaching 2. Mm-hmm. And it was like intro to advertising.
Yeah, nice.
and what was the other one? It might even have been history of advertising. And it was a really interesting group, the first group that came in, because they were kind of pioneers. Like there were a lot of them were slightly older students, like there were very few people straight out of high school, so they were kind of in the game. And they were this really fun, smart group of kids, and I just had a blast teaching. And so, as the next term came around, I said, "Do you want to do another one?" I said, "Okay, all right." And I did another one, and then I said another one, and another one, and it kind of became like, okay, I'll just make room to teach a course per term.
You still had your company
because I'm still running a company, right? And so that's what we did for I think 3 or 4 years, I guess. And then ultimately they said, "Look, do you want to do this full time?" I said, "Well, I like it, and I like the idea of doing it." And so, I was down to one business partner at that point, and we'd always had this arrangement, which was that we would never let what we're doing with the company get in the way of other things that we might want to do, within reasons of like responsibility and stuff. And it turns out at that time he was also being headhunted by the CBC. He ended up taking over their Kids Interactive, and so he was kind of looking for a potential exit. And then when Humber offered me the job, I said, "I got this job offer," and he said, "I sort of have this job offer." And so, okay.
Whoa. Look at the universe.
Yeah. So that seemed to like line up. And then it took us a couple of years to wind down the rest of the business, but that's kind of how we ended up there.
So you just stop with, like, how does a business wind down? You just stop taking on new work?
Exactly. You just,
fold?
Okay. You basically stop looking for new work. And then you continue to serve the clients that you have until such time as, and you sort of say, like, you let them know, right? After
one day, you're like, "Hey, we're done."
After date X, we have to close this out because we're no longer going to be operational. So, and as I say, it took, I think, about a year and a half. I think by the time we were able to.
And were you married? Did you find time? Like you're so busy with so many things, and I think that's kind of, I guess, what answered my question before of like why you were able to get out and left that book thing, was that you had so many things on the go. Did you have time for a relationship or?
Yeah. Okay. Now, to be fair,
I don't want to get you in trouble with anyone.
No. I won't get in trouble with my current wife. My wife. My wife. Yeah. But in the early, the earlier part of it, like the Q&Q in the early HarperCollins years, this is a fact. I think when you're young, when you're in that stage of your career, you can and should be going full bore all the time, because that's when you're learning so much, and you've got the energy, and you've got the capability, and your brain is wide open to possibilities, and you just gotta take advantage of that and work your fucking ass off, which I did. And I have an ever so slight workaholic tendency that I inherited from my dad. So that kind of cost me what was sort of my first marriage.
Whoa, okay.
So we weren't actually married, but we've been together like 5 years, and we were clearly kind of tracking that way. And in the end, it wasn't just the work, but the work was a big part of it. Like, I was so intensely into my work, and I kind of I actually had to get some therapy.
Good, love therapy.
To get myself clear of like understanding why I had to do that, and which was really, really helpful. And I kind of got some perspective, and got a little bit better at it. And
so you like therapy? Therapy was good for people.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
you need another adult who is not invested in you in any way to look at you objectively and say, give your head a shake.
Yeah, pretty much.
Your friends and family will never give you the kind of honesty you need that a therapist can give. And you want a good therapist too. And luckily, I had a good one. So, and you graduate from therapy, right? You do what you need to do, and then you graduate. Like, don't make it a codependent relationship.
Yeah. It's not a lifetime commitment.
So, yeah, and it's a big time commitment. And I basically got what I needed out of it and figured out some things and moved on. But by that time, it was kind of too late for that relationship. But it set me up to be, I think, in a much better place for my subsequent major relationship, which became my wife. But she was working just like Leslie, my wife. She was in the same part of her career. Like, she was going full bore. And so we were both kind of working really, really hard, and we kind of understood. I think I still kind of overdid it on the hours. Like she used to complain that every time we go on holiday, I'd sleep for 2 days for the first 2 days.
That's a sign.
Because, or I'd be taking work with me, like, oh yeah.
Have you always been this ambitious, like since you were a kid? You said you adopted it from your dad, but at what point do you think there was a moment where you're like, this is where it probably started, where I became like this workaholic, or did something happen to you?
No, I don't like, honestly, I don't think I wouldn't describe myself as ambitious per se. I think I'm more like someone who just wants to do really good work. And sometimes that means having to, work long hours because that's how you get to the good stuff. But it's more like my feeling is it can always be better. You can always do better. You can do better. You can do better. Like it's good, but it's not great. Keep going. Make it better. Make it better. Make it better. Which is sometimes not healthy. But it also it means I always kind of have a little bit of a thing that will make me try to do a little more.
Yeah, that resilience, persistence to innovate, reiterate.
And I
look
think
at things differently.
And honestly, I think it's paid off in the work I've done as a teacher. I think there is a really strong temptation if you are a tenured professor to just put it on the glide path, because really there is no real motivation to know. But I kind of go like, I keep looking at stuff. I drive people crazy at Humber all the time because when shit doesn't work, I tell them, and I sometimes annoy people about it. But it's not because I want to be a dick. I just want stuff to be better.
Yeah.
Like we can always do better. We can do this better. And this kind of circles back to my whole kind of sabbatical project, right? We're doing a good job. Some would say we're doing a really good job, judging by the results we get from our graduates. And I just kind of think, yeah, we're doing a good job, but maybe we can do a really good job or a great job or at least a better job.
Do you ever feel like you've ever accomplished something perfectly or done something perfectly where you're like, okay, this is I don't need to really redo it?
God, no.
No?
Yeah, no. But I don't think I'm unique in that. Right? Like I think most creative people who are like professionally creative, or I don't think of myself as an artist, but people with an artistic sensibility are never actually satisfied. You're not finished, or you're not satisfied. You just stop at a certain point.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Right. Like I got back into writing a bit more recently, and I started working on writing poetry. I used to write poetry when I was younger, and I found that I found it a really great mental exercise to get back into doing it again. And I have this sort of project going at the moment where I'm writing this kind of collection of I call it sort of a themed collection of poems. I love sailing. I love sailboats. It's sort of about
I did not know that.
sailing and history. Anyway, and it got prompted by an experience I had in Lunenburg on vacation like 8 years ago, looking at old boats and thinking about old boats, and I just realized I had to write poetry about this, and so I did, and I started writing. I got a whole bunch of poems, and I'm very, very, very slowly moving them towards doing a little self-published chapbook, because that's what you do with this shit. And I keep going back to it, and I can't push the button on like laying it out and going to print, because I keep going, I can make that a little better. I can make that a bit better. I can make that a bit better. And because there's no pressure, there's no deadline, there's no client, there's no necessary stop, I can fuck with that for the rest of my life.
And you enjoy that,
and I love it. And I'm not. I mean, at a certain point, I'm going to say, just call it a day, so you can move on to another project, please. Right. But no, I think I think it's a kind of a creative curse that you, because you work in the world of possibility anyway, because you're always putting things together and figuring out how things could be, that whatever you actualize from that process is always ultimately going to be just a little bit disappointing, or that you can always see you can take it a bit further and you can do a bit more, and so, I think if you approach it in a healthy way, you do just say, stop, put it aside and move on. Because the funny thing is, I also find that even though I'm usually most dissatisfied with my work when immediately after I'm finished it.
Mm.
If I leave it long enough and go back at it and look at it, go, oh,
There's something weird about that.
that wasn't bad.
It's so weird. I totally agree with you. I remember looking at my portfolio and being like, this is all crap. But somehow I got hired at an internship and all that stuff. And then looking back a year later, I'm like, oh, you know what?
That's actually
We're
pretty
kind
good.
of pretty funny. Like, I like these. And
Yeah.
I know so many friends of mine who are creatives, and they're kind of sitting with that for so long because there are no deadlines. And it's like, for example, an actor, a musician or something, they never want to go past that point. But what would you tell someone in that moment? Because when it's like, it needs to be better, is it like walk away and come back?
I think it's actually just put it out there. Just put it out there, because for starters, the flaws and insufficiencies that you see because you're this close to it are not what the rest of the world is going to see. They're going to see all the good stuff. They might, might not love it, or they might, ultimately find flaw with it, but who cares? 95% of it, they're going to see all the good stuff, for number one. And number two, you got to get it out there and get it. It's like, if you don't put it out there, you're going to like cling to it. And this kind of goes back to the way we work, like in like ad studio stuff, where it's all about just keep pounding out the ideas, because idea number 2 might be the idea, but you'll never know if number 2 is the great one until you've got another 100 that weren't as good. So, but maybe idea number 88 is the fantastic one, right? So just throw it out, just do it, bulk, keep doing it, put it out there, like think about how few hit songs any musician ever actually has. It's perishingly small, unless you're the Beatles, right? And that's a whole other thing, right? Even the greatest bands maybe have 4, 5, 6 really big hits. They had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs that never went anywhere. Or maybe they were actually really great, but they just weren't of the right moment, or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, you had to keep going and putting the stuff out before you got to the one that was the hit. And maybe you only get one hit. I always love the whole thing about just a one-hit wonder. I go, you know what? I would give my left arm to be a one-hit wonder, because that means you got one hit, which is way more than most people.
Yeah. No, you're totally right.
So, I think, and this is me preaching stuff that I don't do enough of, but
sure.
but really, like, you just got to get stuff out, get over yourself, put it out there, let people see it, let the chips fall over them, and move on and keep doing more.
It's hard for people to do that, though, especially I feel like at a young age, when they're like so, like you said, like full of ideas, and they're like a sponge. They're willing to absorb stuff, but that insecurity comes, and you see someone, let's say, on the internet who's doing better than you, and you can kind of compare yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think that is that's a genuine problem. That the internet has given us instantaneous access to everything, everywhere, from all time, which means that you don't actually compare yourself to your immediate peers or to your competitive set. You're comparing yourselves to the best on the planet of all time of the thing you happen to be trying to do. And that's just going to go, oh my God, how can I play guitar? How can I play guitar? Right. And, I think that's super unfair, right? For people to be stuck with that kind of thing. And I have a whole lot of sympathy for it. And, I didn't have to grow up with it, thankfully. I mean, there were lots of other, you could see great stuff around you, and you could be annoyed by the fact that people are better not doing it. But I think it's a lot more acute now. I think you just have to find a way to shut out the noise of it and just do your thing.
It's a tough one, right? You got to be comfortable with yourself. I find, like, do you feel comfortable? Like, what point in your life did you feel comfortable with who you are? I feel like a lot of people are still wearing hats that maybe aren't the ones they should be, pretending to be something that they're not. And I feel like when you become comfortable with who you are, you don't care if you're, like I said, the best in the world, or maybe just the best in your city.
Yeah.
Do you remember a moment where you're like, I'm kind of cool?
Yeah.
That's
never cool. No.
Well, not cool, but you're comfortable with who you are. Like,
comfortable in your own skin. Well, that's a really difficult thing to get to, I think, for anybody. I think it's really great when you can. it may be possible. It may be true that artists, creative people, have a harder time getting to that point of being comfortable. Again, just because you're always kind of nagged at the possibilities that you might not be able to fulfill. But I also think that comfort in your own skin is also, frankly, it's a function of age. Like, because I think about the way I was in my 20s and my 30s and even in my 40s was that I was all about striving. There was stuff I wanted to do. There were things I wanted to achieve. There were things undone in my life that needed to be done. And and you have this huge amount of energy to do it too. It's libidinal energy essentially and you can stay up all night and do and work hard, and you can put in 80-hour weeks if you have to. You've got that capacity to do it, and you've got the sort of the drive to make an impact and also to form yourself, figure out what you are, and fulfill what you believe are your potentials. And you do that, and you sort of see where it gets to, and it's a little bit like a rocket, you get the booster rocket, and depending on where it's pointed, you get into an orbit, and then by about your 50s, you hit the orbit you're going to get, and you realize, oh, this is my orbit. this is I got no more booster engines, so I got two choices. I can be annoyed with this, or I can go, this is who I am. And
when you're 50,
and get comfortable with it, right? And it sounds really facile now that I'm saying, but honestly, I think it's true that you grow out of that itching need to be, and you get to a spot where I think maybe not everybody does. I feel lucky that I actually am in that spot. Yeah. This may be a guy thing, maybe it's women too, but careers have a trajectory, and there's that point in your life when you realize that whatever the major goals you had, you've probably achieved them. I'm not going to win a Cannes Lion. I just am not at this stage. It's like my career has gone in a place where that's simply not going to happen.
And you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that. What the hell?
Really? I thought you were this ambitious. I'm going to do...
Well, yeah. If you talk to me when I was 35, that'd be a whole different deal. What do you mean? I got it. But, but the other thing about having a longer career is you get to look back and say, sort of like your old portfolio, well, you know what? That was actually pretty good. And I've had the good fortune with the teaching thing, which, by the way, I never had any intention of doing. It's a complete amateur teacher. Although one of my former girlfriends, when I got the offer from Humber, and I was thinking about, I don't know if I want to do it. She said, "Don't be an idiot. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're always supposed to do."
Oh,
okay.
Foreshadowing right there.
Okay. All right. I guess anyway, just to say that in the course of doing this thing, which was like building this program, I essentially got to fulfill what were my entrepreneurial dreams around building an agency, but instead building a program that turned into a talent factory. So I kind of get to live vicariously through the success of my students, who I can claim this much credit for at least putting them on the path to success. So, I don't really have anything of a portfolio anymore, but I feel like my students are now my portfolio.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there's an immense amount of satisfaction in that. And it's a satisfaction that I never would have anticipated that I would have wanted or cared about when I was 35, but I'm 60. And I look at that and I go, yeah, you know what? That's actually pretty good. I can say that in some tiny little way, I feel like I've made a bit of a contribution somewhere here.
So would you tell young people who are ambitious going for it or anyone, I guess, that you're going to get all these rewards looking back on life? The goal with this kind of is to talk about people who've been through it, and a
Right,
lot
right,
of
right.
fog of war. At 17, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really want to. I didn't know I was going to go into this program. My mom
Yeah.
dragged me to Humber, and she said, "You're going to
You're
look
one of those
at
kids. Yeah,
graphic
okay.
design,
Yeah.
package design,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
advertising." And I
Right.
chose advertising.
Yeah.
But if you asked a 17-year-old me, I'd be like, I don't know. I've played a lot with Premiere and Photoshop. I like the ideas of ads. Like looking back, no regrets. But I feel like a lot of people my age and at that age are looking forward, being like, I don't want to make the wrong move.
Yeah.
Because then I'm going to be somewhere where I didn't want to be, right? And that's why I kind of started with that whole 10-year plan.
Right. Yeah, and again, a couple of things. One is I think it's fantastically unfair to put that kind of pressure on the 17-year-old, and I feel this every time we have an open house and we get these poor kids. I mean, the last one we did, this poor kid was dragged out to he's pushed in front of me by his parents. And, like he's, I said, what are you interested in? And of course the parents say, oh, he's all into this and that. And I'm just thinking, you know what, let the kid talk, And I just feel like you're putting so much pressure on this kid to make a decision about what they want in their life. And they come on, give it some space. I think there's actually a kind of a balance on this thing, which is that, yes, have a plan. Yes, figure out some goals, but give yourself some space to decide what those goals might actually be. And that means play. That means explore. That means fuck around with stuff, try things, do different stuff. It's a little bit like, the way the whole Marx thing drives me crazy in school, right? I've always kind of been unhappy with having to put a number beside somebody's work, because I think, well, what are you working for? Are you working for the number, or are you working for figuring something out about yourself? Right? Because that working for the number is stupid. Because for the rest of your life, not one single person is going to come to you at your desk at work and say, your work this week was a 68. We really like to see it at 75. That just doesn't happen. Come on. School is stupid and artificial in that way. But if you give yourself a little bit of liberty to play and explore and be prepared to fail and accept that failure is sometimes really useful. No one picks up the tuba and plays it perfectly. What do? All you do is fail. You fail and fail and fail and fail and fail until you get better. And which I feel this. I almost feel like we're in this sort of contradictory thing. But make a 10-year plan, but be prepared to fail. But yeah, and the whole paralysis of choice, oh my God, I don't want to make the wrong choice because I could end up. And honestly, all I can say about that is nobody gets the plan.
Okay, I like that.
Nobody gets this. I think maybe a profession where you get to plan that way is, I don't know, if you want to be a family doctor. Sure, right? Yeah. Where the path is laid out step by step by step by step by step, right? And even at that, who knows what type of medicine you might go into, right?
Or if you'll be happy doing that.
Or if you'll be happy doing that, because that's the other thing. It's you make this hard decision and you commit yourself to it. And what if you're 8 years into a medical degree and you realize, I actually don't like this?
Yeah, because it sounds like you don't regret. I mean, you said you don't regret any of it, but you didn't have that plan changed so much that you were kind of, like you said, having fun with it. I saw the boring books. I'm going to move on to something else. I saw this company I wanted to build, and then I saw this other thing with teaching, and you kind of bounced around like that, playing.
Yeah. Well, again, it was, part of it is expediency, and part of it is recognizing an interesting opportunity that turns you crank. And honestly, the only reason I got involved with Humber is because I looked at what was going on. I realized there is no elite ad school in Canada. It didn't exist. It's okay, for me as an entrepreneur, this is gold, because I get a chance now to build this from the ground up with total greenfield, right? Greenfield, Blue Sea, whatever you want to call it, right? Because no one else is doing this. I mean, Humber had a copywriting program. That was basically it.
Wow.
And, so it's hey, great, we can do this and make something that wasn't there before. And for me, that was adequate compensation, because I was building something again. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, I can build this instead of that. all right, let's do that.
Yeah, you seem like a builder, someone who likes to start the company and not just sit and maintain it. Like those CEOs, I've heard someone say there's two types of CEOs: someone who builds it and then sells it or gets rid of it, and someone who's very good at looking at it and cutting fat, maintaining, and they're like that. Those two types of leaders when it comes to CEOs.
With a lot of startups, that's how it kind of has. You need two.
Mm-hmm.
You need the startup CEO, and then you need the maintenance CEO, and they aren't usually the same person.
Yeah.
No, I think the building thing, again, we always go back to your dad's, right? Like my dad's a cabinet maker.
Whoa, okay.
But he's a cabinet maker who started out as a stockbroker.
That's such a crazy story.
So this is maybe why I've never been uncomfortable with sort of deciding, I want to do something different. Because for the first 15 years of his career, my dad worked on Bay Street in a stockbrokerage. He was a stockbroker, and one day he came home and said to my mom, "That's it. I'm not going back. I just don't want to do that shit anymore."
Good for him.
And what do you want to do? Well, I like building things. And, and my dad actually probably, if he had the right path put in front of him, he probably should have been an industrial designer. He's like this brilliant 3-dimensional thinker. Like he builds stuff, it blows me away. I basically was a cabinet maker's apprentice when I was a kid because he was a cabinet maker. And so if he needed help, he's like, me and my brother, well, come on, dude. Like like you're helping me deliver some shit or build things or whatever. So, but yeah, so like he had done a completely radical turn like that. So it was not that, it wasn't an unknown approach to life for me. And I was always really proud of him for doing that because that was pretty cool. And, I grew up as a result of that with a whole bunch of interesting skills. And I think probably my love of building things came out of the fact that, that's what my dad did. He built stuff, right? And taught me how to build things. And so I don't build the same things he built, but I like building things. So,
How did you know English and literature and writing was your crank? Like, I feel like a lot of myself, again, 17, I didn't know. I loved all these things, photography, videography, podcasting, talking to people, but I never really knew what turned my crank. I still feel like I don't fully know. Did you know at a young age, and how did you know?
Well, I guess I always kind of did things that were in that realm as a kid, kind of without thinking about it too much. Like I always drew as a kid. I was like in grade school and then in high school. I was always in like art classes, and I used to write a lot. In high school, I was like the editor of my school newspaper.
Cool.
All that kind of crap. And so I always kind of felt that I didn't know where or how it was going to go. I was actually, I always figured, well, I'll probably just be a lawyer.
What?
Yeah. Well, I thought, well, I wanted to study artsy stuff. But if I wanted like a job out of it, then, then like law is one of those places you can go if you are, at least moderately intelligent and want to make a living out of like playing with words the whole time. Because the first place I went to school actually after high school was I went to York in fine arts. So I did that for a year. And that was me kind of figuring out that I wasn't going to be a painter, but I really liked design.
Cool. Okay, that's a good distinction. Yeah,
and there was clearly like I realized as much as I liked to do art, I was not an artist in the compulsive way you need to be an artist who is an artist as a calling, because I think it really is kind of a calling. But I love the work and I love the design side of stuff, and I like the design. I like the thinking of design. So I didn't know what to do with that, but I also realized that I didn't like being at York. So I took off and I traveled for a year.
Did that help? Did that take people talk about that all the time as like a big moment that helped them realize, almost like you said, give yourself that time to get away, to get in to think what you want. I feel like people don't do that or have that option. It's 17, you got to go, or whatever age.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you remember some of the people from the program that like I have repeatedly told people, leave, go, take a year, work, but especially travel. Just to get some perspective on things and to give your head, and because there's nothing bad can come of travel if you want to be a creative person. Mm. So what happened with me is that, I had the year at York, and I had a bit of a kind of a some, I'd always call it a crisis of faith, but it wasn't really that, because I'm sort of not really Catholic. So it wasn't really religious, but it was like, I gotta get away from this shit. And so there was a program that was on at the time called Canada World Youth. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So it was an exchange program, a third world exchange program. A good friend of mine had done it, and he'd gone to Senegal.
Cool.
And so he said, Ben, you really ought to look into this, because I think you'd be good for it. So I thought, okay. And I had the good fortune of actually getting into it. So I lived in Quebec for 4 months, and then I lived in Costa Rica for 4 months, and which were amazing experiences. And then I came home for about 3 weeks, and then I left again and went to Europe and spent the rest of that summer in Europe, like 3 or 4 months wandering around, just kind of randomly, right?
So you had no goal; you were just feeling.
There were actually there were two. One, I had a couple of relatives that in England that I needed to kind of just meet, basically, because I never met them before. And then apart from that, and I had some friends who were traveling, who were living in Brixton in London at the time, so I was going to go hang out with them for a bit. And then the other thing was, when I had been studying art history, I got really obsessed with Gothic cathedrals.
Oh, okay.
Really loved the form of them, and so I thought, well, if I'm here, I'm gonna spend like a lot of time, and I basically spent like 6 weeks or so just going from one town with one Gothic cathedral, and I had to do this alone because I would have driven anybody completely insane.
For sure.
And I'm going like from one to the other, and I'm just like immersing myself in this and drawing them and like doing all this kind of stuff, and it just like it fucking blew my head off. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
Basically the whole kind of European circuit, and then came home. And after that, that's when I went to UT and but coming out of the Canada World Youth experience, which was very much sort of all about kind of geopolitics and the state of the third world and the responsibility of the first world to the third world. So which is one of the reasons that one of the first things I got into was political science and history, right? So I'm thinking, when I got back to school at UT, that's why I kind of went into that stuff, because I wanted to see, well, is this a path coming out of that experience that I want to follow up on? Do I want to work in this sector? Do I want to work in development? Do I want to, and then again, law was maybe one of those places that could go. And then I got sidetracked by literature.
That's so cool. It's almost like you just followed with what you were curious with at the moment. Like the churches is a big thing for me, at least. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you started with one thing and just kind of, that's cool. And you started walking there. That's kind of cool. You start walking there and it kind of just led you here. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And, again, though, I think part of it is being open to curiosity is definitely like, curiosity is so crucial, right? Mm-hmm. You just got to be open to stuff. But in the course of things like your studies, being open to things that might just turn you on, like that was a whole art history class. There was lots of interesting stuff in it. I was interested in a lot of it, but there was something about those fucking cathedrals that I had to get into. It was, and I started doing art around them as well, at the time, and then the opportunity to actually go and be in them and and it was amazing. It was the most amazing experience. I completely loved it. And as I said, I would have driven anybody else mental to have been with me.
I think I could have gone on one or two and been okay, that's enough.
Not another cathedral. No, but you don't understand. This is like the middle period when they were just starting to figure out, right? Oh God, yeah. So, but yeah, it's just like, what are the things that just sort of grab you and go, hey, let's drill down, man. Chances are there's something really interesting in there. If something triggers that, follow it.
Yeah. Is that like a gut feeling? Or was it
no, I think it's a gut thing. I think it's more like a fascination or just somehow or other you got to know more about that. right? There's something about it that resonates with you for some reason.
And you're never worried about where you're going to end up in the future? Like you're following these things that you're curious about, you're hyper ambitious about something, which is all great. But do you ever get worried, or were you ever worried, scared?
So, well, yeah, I mean, okay. The only time, well, okay. I became acquainted with fear.
Oh, okay. Like how this is starting.
in my career trajectory, I think the moment that I had a son.
Whoa, okay.
Because up until that moment, it was just about me, right? I could fuck up. It didn't matter, right? If I ended up in the gutter, it didn't matter. It's just me. Mm-hmm. But once you have the responsibility of a spouse and a child, then you gotta go. Okay, maybe skydiving is off the table, right? Like maybe the dumb stuff is off the table. Maybe you gotta think less about the riskier stuff and more about what's going to provide stability or security. Like you just like it, and it's a light switch too, right? It's like there's that moment it happens, and apparently something actually really does happen to the male brain hormonally when you have a child. Like the first time you pick up that kid, and I remember it so intensely. It was the most unbelievable feeling. But I just realized, oh, my brain has now just gone completely to mush, and my life will never be the same again. But and I remember thinking about it. Look, I'm never going to get to be fearless again, because now I've got. First, I got to worry about you little bundle of kid, right? Like now I'm going to be as scared for the rest of my life that bad shit's going to happen to you, and that never stops. But I also, I have to be worried about keeping you safe, which means I have to be a little bit more circumspect in my own career about the chances that I take. And I can't say that really got in my way. I think the trajectory was kind of in place at that point, so I didn't have to worry too much about it. But
yeah, where were you when you had your first kid, like career-wise?
How old were you? No, actually, I was still running the business because I was 40. So we were kind of late to the game.
Okay, yeah.
But no, I was still running the business at that point. So yeah, and it kind of, the success or failure of it became much more acute in my mind, right? This was like, oh, okay, you have to, but yeah. But I think it kind of. That's just a reality of parenthood. Like if I had my son when I was 27, my life would have been much, much different for the same reason. Like I would have taken a much more conventional path, I think, because I would have felt the pressure to have that stability, and because I wouldn't have had the freedom to only have to worry about my own results and my own, whatever happened to me. So. Yeah, it's a funny thing the way that stuff happens.
Did having a son motivate you to work harder or anything? Like what motivates you outside of the curiosity to do these things? I know you're saying like you probably inherited a little bit of your dad, but there must be something there of like a motivation to keep you going in those tough times.
Yeah. Well, I think in the current circumstance, there are two things. One is, I never think. Okay, when we first got the program going, one of the things I was saying to Rosen was, we have to think of ourselves as, and I ripped this off from Google, but permanent beta. We, the business is moving too fast and changing too much for us to ever actually have solved the problem here. We have to think of ourselves as necessarily constantly evolving and changing, permanent beta. Which to my mind translates out as there's always something to do to make this better. So that particular part of it is sort of baked in for me. Like I don't have to. I know I can see every minute of my teaching day. Like I can do better. I can do better. I should do better. I will do better. I've got to figure out how to do things better. I got to motivate people better, whatever it takes. It's good, but it can always be better. And the other part of it is I feel acutely aware of the responsibility I have to my students who are investing enormous amounts of money, which is not easy to come by. That what I am providing for them has to provide. I've got to provide value for their money. I don't have the luxury of saying. I don't feel like I have the luxury of saying take it or leave it. For me, it's like, I feel acutely responsible for your outcome. And sometimes it's hard to square that with the fact that it's hard to be acutely responsible for the outcome of 120 people. Really is, but
it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. Sometimes you got to pick and choose, and sometimes people will announce to you that they're not that interested, so you let them go. But the people who, clearly are into it and want the help and need the help, I'll fucking, move heaven and earth because I feel that responsibility, and I like to think that that the people who teach my son hopefully will feel something of that same responsibility. I know that I had fantastic teachers in my life, and I feel a kind of a responsibility to them to live up to the quality of what I was able to benefit from, which is actually kind of how I figured out how to be a teacher. Which I'm not sure that I figured out how to be a teacher, but my guidelines on this were: who are the best teachers who ever taught you? Just act like them.
Yeah,
pretty straightforward. I had a fantastic teacher, a guy named Joaquin Kuhn, and he taught me literature, one of the literature courses. And it was a funny course because it was just a credit that I needed to fill in. I was in fourth year. It was like a first or second year course, so it was kind of a dawdle for me. But he was dealing with a whole bunch of people who were, basically kind of first year kids. And I loved the guy because, he would do these discussions, and every now and then, like, there'd be somebody would ask a really, frankly, dumb question.
Okay.
Right. And I love the guy because he would listen to the question, he would take it seriously, he would address the person respectfully, he would give them a good, clear answer. There was never any, he would never, mock the kid or give any sense that that was kind of a dumb question.
Yeah. Right.
It was like, no, you are performing an academic inquiry of, that is valid, and it's who you are. And it's like, yeah, so let's go with it. Because, it was clearly completely natural to him because he was fundamentally respectful of the people in his classroom. And I kind of think that that's what I try to do. I don't know if I'm wholly successful all the time, but that's, for me, that's the kind of model that I always tried to work from, right? I've said, I don't know how many times in my classes, there are no dumb questions. Don't worry about asking a dumb question. Ask a dumb question. I don't care. I won't treat it like a dumb question because there actually aren't any dumb questions.
It says a lot to a lot of people, right? I remember a lot of teachers that I liked, you yourself included in this list, and those people resonate, and those people help you and guide you in those pivotal times when they're young and when they're kind of vulnerable of asking this silly question, right, or dumb question, and it really helps them become, I think personally, a better person, because sometimes you have to ask those stupid questions, right, or those dumb questions to get through it. I liked what one thing you said in copywriting class was get all your thoughts on paper, because your brain is not meant to remember stuff, right? And your brain is going to be occupied with this one thought of this one ad campaign. So write it all down quickly, get it done, next page. And it's kind of the iteration of different ideas, but get them all out. Even if there's nothing, just start writing nothing, because sometimes your hand just starts writing and you're not even thinking, but you're already subconsciously getting these ideas out. I want to know, did you have any mentors growing up when you were younger to help you, in your weakest moment? Did you rely on yourself? Because you seem like someone who's ambitious, self-ambitious. And, did you ever have a weak moment? And what did you do to get out of it?
Did I have a weak moment? God, I always had weak moments. I didn't always have help when I had weak moments.
See, that's so what did you do? Because you've gotten so far. I love that you almost play with everything. I've thought the cathedrals are interesting. I saw this, but a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, when they're in those dark times of their minds, they don't know what to do.
Well, I think a couple of things. First, I've always felt like I've been unbelievably lucky in the sense that I had fantastic parents who, managed to instill in me a very high level of self-esteem, warranted or not. And so, I'm pretty, pretty stable. I mean, sure, I can get depressed. Everybody gets depressed and you get beat up and shit. But I think I've been fundamentally lucky that way. And I think maybe it's because I'm a first child. I got 2 younger siblings. That always puts you into a kind of a leadership role that you kind of are there, even if you're only leading yourself. There's nobody. I guess the point is, as an elder sibling, and I'm not only the oldest sibling, I'm the oldest of my cousins. So my mother is the eldest of her family, and I'm the eldest. So I don't even have any older cousins, right? So I didn't have an older brother telling me which records to listen to or something. I had to figure shit out for myself, right? Which is fine by me, and I was okay with that. So I always had this very independent streak, sometimes to my detriment, which is to say that, and I really do regret this, that I was too independent sometimes, and to the point of I almost say arrogance, but sometimes with just kind of bloody-mindedness, like I will figure this out myself. I don't need help. I will figure this out myself. When really I should have actually reached out. And I would say that looking back, I would say, you know what? I never really did have in the work world much of that kind of mentorship. Partially because I think I probably looked like I didn't want it or didn't need it, but I also never sought it out. A year or two ago, I saw that the one guy I would say would kind of fall into that category a little bit was my boss when I was at HarperCollins, who was not the old guy who wouldn't take my, but I'm trying to remember, actually he was the CEO, and the president was a guy named Ed Carson, who was always kind of been my, if Jocelyn Kuhn was kind of one of my models for teaching. So Ed has always been kind of one of my models for how do you be a really great manager. And this guy was super smart and super respectful. Like he would never raised his voice, never raised his voice. Total authority, and he was just really good people person, and very supportive in a whole bunch of ways. And I didn't work with him too terribly directly. But we were on good terms and stuff. And actually he's well retired, of course, obviously now, and he's quite old. But a couple of years ago, I got in touch with him because he's also a poet, right? And a very good poet, actually, a very good poet. And I'd seen one of his books and I bought it and I just thought, oh, let's see what Ed's stuff is like. And I'm reading, going, oh fuck. You're a good poet too. You asshole.
You have it all.
You bastard. Yeah, but I really liked it. And so I thought, you know what, I should just get in touch with him. So I called him up and we went and had a coffee and we talked about his books and we talked about stuff. And I said, listen, you got to know that, in my career subsequent to HarperCollins, you have always been the kind of like the model for how I thought about what great managers are. I said, well, thanks. I said, well, how did you get there? He said, well, my dad. His dad would work for like Shell or something like that. And he basically kind of learned from his dad how to do all that kind of stuff. Like Ed didn't really want to manage it. And he didn't want to run a publishing company. He wanted to be a writer. But that was how he never stopped being a writer, but, he learned how to be a manager, kind of from his own dad. I would say that I wish I'd had more of that kind of direct mentorship, but I kind of blame myself for it. And I would say to now, especially to young people kind of looking to get their careers going, seek out the mentors, and like don't be shy about it either. Like if there's somebody you think is the person that you want to be, or like, and I think the thing about mentorship is that it can feel kind of mercenary, like like I'm getting something out of this from this person, right? And what are they getting back for it? And I think it's always worth keeping that in mind with the mentorship, like what do I bring back to it? And and I think people who do it as mentors, you actually do get a lot back from it. You get a window into what another generation is thinking and what their lives are about and what their culture is about, and that's really, really helpful and useful. My wife is a fantastic mentor, and she does it a lot, and she's very proactive about it, and partly because it's a woman thing, and she feels it's really important. I mean, she's a super smart, like, executive woman who has fought the good fight for a long time, and she is really dedicated to mentoring young women, and does it a lot. And she always says she gets more out of it than she puts into it because of that. So, find the people. And the thing is, if someone says no, then that's okay. They just, either they don't have the time, or they know they aren't the right person for you, but just try someone else.
How do you deal with rejection? Like, I feel like some things I'm so good at. I was naturally good at sales, just knocking on doors or talking to random people. You tell me to go do some viral video, walk around and ask people stuff. I have no problem. That's inherent to me. Yeah. But some other things I suck when I get rejected. Like if I emailed a couple of people, I'll be honest with you, that I thought would say yes to this podcast. No. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like that really stung. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think that probably first of all, accept that rejection hurts. I think, like no matter how, like there's nothing good about it. But also, I think it's also important to accept that that rejection is rarely personal. It's almost never personal. And it very, very often has actually no bearing whatsoever on the quality of your work or who you are as a person. That there are almost always other forces at work that are conspiring that you can't know about and you can't deal with. And sometimes even the person who's doing the rejecting doesn't want to do the rejecting, but they don't actually have any choice for one reason or another, things that they have no control over and you can't even know. So, so I think I think with rejection, you just kind of try to make the context a little bigger, frame it a little wider. Remember, n number of great artists that got rejected 1,000 times before they got anywhere. And a lot of people you're trying to get that thing from, the people you're trying to get the yes from, are spending their whole day having to say no. Like I remember this when I was like pitching film projects when in the aughts, and we had some successes, but there was a lot of love the project, can't fit it into our stuff now, or I do it if I could, or whatever. And it's like, and you'd be pissed off. What do you mean you can't do it now? Because if it's good, you should do it. But in a wider lens, there's probably a really good reason for it that not only is unknowable, but it's like there's nothing you can do about it. So why worry about it? I think with the rejection thing, you just gotta keep doing the work and the good work, and keep being willing to put yourself out there, because sometimes it's just a numbers game. And I see this happen with my students all the time, right? Like the number of times, like really good students, I'm going, why does this person not scored an internship yet? Like they're great. And oftentimes it is literally just odds and numbers and luck. Like you just weren't in the right spot at the right time for the right person for the right need. And if you were, it would have locked in and you're good. Didn't work out that one. Okay, fire the shotgun and keep firing it, because one of those ones, it is going to be the right spot at the right time. And, I don't deny that that's a hard thing to do mentally. But I would also say that the other way you can mitigate the impact of it is to be systematic. So, if you're in a position like where you're trying to sell something through, or you're trying to get a yes from somewhere, systematize it. Get it on a spreadsheet. Make sure you know every single person you've talked to, and try to get that. If not you, then who, right? And then move on to that next who, right? Because then you don't get to see it as a whole bunch of failure. You see it as just part of a process that's getting you to success.
Makes a lot of sense. I see that a lot with myself, is that the things that I do systematize and almost gamify, like I think of a character in a role-playing game where the more I do the hacking of the lumber, the more my axe skills go up, And so it's almost gamifying that. At the gym, for example, I don't really care about how much I'm lifting. I'm just trying to get as many gym sessions in for the year,
right?
To get the benefit of being stronger or losing weight. And I'm going to pivot a little bit. I have a feeling this is going to be you're going to say nothing, but how do you deal with regret? And do you have any regrets?
How do I deal with regret? Yeah. Well, oops.
You're good.
I regret bumping
you're good.
Looking like an idiot. So I think that I have the good fortune of being in a place in my life where I've basically processed my regrets, because I have the luxury of being, in a fairly happy place in terms of my health and my marriage and my job and my career. And, probably the most recent regret I had to process was I was thinking about, there was an opening for an associate dean job at Humber. And I was beginning to feel kind of stale in the program, and I thought about, okay, do I want to actually kind of move up the food chain? And so I put a hard swing in for that. And then some things revealed themselves to me that realized that it was a fixed job and I wasn't going to get it. And I was super angry about it for a while because I found the process to be so fundamentally disrespectful. But then I just had to kind of pack that away and go, well, you know what? That's Humber, right? And so, my regret on that was that I couldn't have a bigger impact on a larger field, because that's kind of what I wanted the job for. And because the thing that always kind of frustrated me about my role now as program coordinator for the Boca program is that you have such limited power and by power I mean basically access to money. Right, that's really what power is. Like I have no budget. I can't hire people. I can't. I have to go beg for stuff all the time when I want to get it done. And I was really tired of that, and I wanted to be in a position to actually move some levers. Because and lots of my colleagues were very keen on the idea of me getting the job because they thought I'd be perfect for it. Yada yada yada. And then it didn't happen for some kind of bad reasons. And as I say, I was super angry about it. But then, giving it more thought, I kind of went that, okay, so like if you didn't get the job, like, is that really that awful? Because really what you're doing now is work that you you love, you know that you are good at, and you know is satisfying, and you know that has an impact on individual people's lives. Whereas if you'd gone up the food chain, you're getting into a more diffuse and more abstract level of impact. Maybe it's okay to be happy with that. So if you think about in terms of how you cope with regrets, I think that's kind of where I usually end up going is, yes, it wasn't what I wanted. Maybe it's something that I wish hadn't happened, but seeing as it has happened, what is it about the outcome that I'm left with, which is actually satisfying?
Yeah, you're reframing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that. That's a really good way to look at it, because I feel like a lot of people, like myself included, and other young people who are not sure, maybe walk the path and regret it. But every lesson, every path you walk, I guess, teaches you something,
Well, and
right?
every path has shit in it too, right?
That's a good
Like that's the
point.
other thing.
That's a good
There
point.
is no golden path, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever your ambition is, whatever the job is that you want, whatever your
Yeah.
ideal thing is that you want to do with your life, get there and you will discover, yeah, there's crap in this too.
Yeah, that's true. I think we're sold this like in TVs and movies and stories of like
Oh,
perfect and get the job, press the stamp button for 40 years and you get a golden watch at the end, and that's a perfect life.
well, honestly, I think that social media's got a little bit to blame on this, because all we ever see is the great stuff.
Yeah.
Because who posts about the shit things that happen in their lives or their jobs? Nobody, right? It's all about the successes and the wins and the glory and the awards and
The Cannes Lions.
the Cannes Lions and all that kind of stuff. And and not about the the shit clients and the bad bosses and like the crappy coworker that's stabbing you, or whatever it is.
Yeah, hopefully not literally.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's all there in some form somewhere. Like it's, and obviously some things are considerably worse than others and some things are considerably better than others. But there's always going to be crap and downsides. Like, I love my job. I totally love my job. There are things about that job that drive me out of my fucking mind all the time. And, ultimately, in a lot of cases where I've just had to go, you know what, just let it go, because you're just wasting energy. There are things you can change and things you can't change. And if you can't change it, there's only so much beating your head against the wall that is worth doing. And so just let it go, and accept the fact that in exchange for this shit, you get this really great thing, and so long as the balance is always way more great than shit, then you're winning.
Yeah.
Right? You're winning,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Like, I used to think about this about relationships, right? Relationships are fun and relationships are work. And when the balance tips more to work and less to fun, that's when you got to go, either we got to fix this or we got to get out. And I think it's the same thing with work. It's like, it's satisfying and there's shit. Try to keep the ledger on the satisfying, fun, wonderful part of it, and
I really like that.
accept that there's crap.
Yeah, I like that, accepting it, because if, like I said, we're sold this perfection thing when in reality it's not. It's all messy. Life is messy. On that note, what advice would you give to people of any age, of any situation in life? They're down on their luck, they're starting a new endeavor.
I think what I would say to anyone as a broad-based piece of advice in your life is assume positive intent. Mm-hmm. So in all of your interactions with people, and I think, we ended up in a weird, polarized, angry place that is actually artificial. That, in fact, 99.9% of the people you ever encounter in your life just want good things for you and are themselves fundamentally decent people. There isn't really a lot of flat out evil that you encounter on a day-to-day basis. In your work and in your life, there's troublesome, difficult people. But broadly speaking, I think if you assume that people mean well, that's a good place to be. And most good things can come out of that.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do for like broad-based advice. But
okay. Do you want to throw one for younger people, maybe, if you have something more that you think would resonate?
Have fun. And there's a concept I always like to think of as deep fun, which is whatever you're doing in your life, it should feel fun. If it feels fun, then it's the right thing for you to be doing. And that fun can be like serious fun, like diving deep on something and getting into something and getting excited by something. But leave yourself open to fun, because that, I feel like, first of all, what are we here for except to have fun? Like, we have this miracle of consciousness in the universe. Then why not enjoy it?
Yeah, no,
right?
You're not wrong.
and that, the pleasure that we get from having fun, I think, is what makes life worth living. So why not make that a focus in your life?
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I like that. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.